The concept of vampires has intrigued the horror genre from the very beginning, and Count Dracula, the centuries-old vampire and sorcerer, has been immortalized as one of the horror icons ever since Bram Stoker's novel featuring him. Since then, Dracula has been a part of various movies, anime, stories, and even the recently released The Last Voyage of the Demeter, featuring a version of him. Given how relevant this evil vampire has been for over a century, we thought it might be a good time to dive into the details of his complex anatomy that makes him the terrifying monster that he is. But before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you, and let's begin.
Light! All right!
What is the exact form of Dracula? Is he a creature or a human? While Dracula has been subjected to various different origin stories, Bram Stoker's version suggests that he was born in the year 1431 in Transylvania, and when he was young, the damnation of God turned him into a vampire. He grew stronger with time, developing his powers of sorcery and necromancy, and Bram Stoker described him as someone who was exceptionally powerful, even among other vampires. The exact form of Dracula has been a subject of mystery, and Bram Stoker didn't do much to clarify it on this subject. This has left his appearance in normal form up for debates, and various versions have explored this accordingly. In the original version of the novel, he has been portrayed as a human. The first appearance shows him as an old man with sharp canines who is always dressed in black. As he continues to feed on new prey, his appearance grows youthful, suggesting that the consumption of human blood is an essential part of his longevity. There are some other versions, however, which show the more monstrous side of Dracula. In the novel, he could transform into various creatures, but certain versions show him originally as some kind of monster. In The Last Voyage of the Demeter, we get to see the same, and even a couple of Dracula movies have taken the same route. Keeping everything in mind, we can safely suggest that Dracula is an otherworldly entity which can take whatever form he wants to. However, as vampire, there could be a possibility that he has an original bat humanoid form, which was also highlighted in the recent movie. Did Dracula evolve from a bat? Why is his base form like a humanoid bat? The idea behind Dracula comes from a real-world blood-sucking creature called the vampire bats. If you're familiar with werewolf lore, you will notice several instances that suggest that werewolves evolved from wolves. Could a similar logic be applicable to Dracula as well? It could be a possibility that Dracula originally evolved from monstrous bats because of how his nature and personality has more elements of vampire bats than humans. That would also explain why he appears like a humanoid bat in many versions, which looks like a state that is midway in the evolution ladder. How does his bite turn individuals into vampires? Is it an infection? One of the most noticeable features of Dracula is how he manages to turn his victims into vampires after landing one of his lethal bites. As explained by Van Helsing, a bite from Dracula starts a chain reaction where the victim is cursed with immortality and they cannot die. They have to go on trying to add new victims, spreading the evil further and further. The only way to put them out of their misery is to somehow have them killed, but there are debates regarding the possibility of the souls of such individuals to ever get the protection of heaven. Dracula's bite seemingly springs one into eternal damnation, and it is almost like a deadly infection that can no longer be cured. In movies, we have observed how victims slowly start changing after being bitten. Similar was the fate of some of the crew members in the Demeter, and in the original novel, he not only bit Mina, but also fed her his own corrupt blood. The moment Dracula's evil blood enters one's bloodstream, there seems to be no escape from the impending doom. Why and how does sunlight trouble Dracula? Dracula has always been regarded as a dark horse who thrives away from light. Naturally, sunlight is not exactly his favorite environment, and he is troubled during the daytime. Some versions of Dracula show that sunlight burns his skin, but Bram Stoker's novel doesn't make sunlight as fatal for him. However, he does lose a lot of his powers during the day. He cannot shapeshift at dawn, noon, or dusk, and a majority of his supernatural abilities are nullified during the day. He is shown to be tired, weaker, and more vulnerable than usual, which makes daytime the perfect moment to attack him. Why does Dracula rest inside coffins? Dracula is a creature of darkness, and during the day he usually finds a safe hiding place inside the coffin. The coffin has a lot of significance because it is filled with soil from his homeland, which is symbolic because the soil allows him to survive in his sleep. It is an essential for Dracula, and the coffin also symbolizes his undead nature. It keeps him away from any sunlight exposure, which can be fatal for him, and it also keeps his resting place hidden away from potential enemies. While he rests during the day, Dracula can be quite vulnerable, and it makes sense for him to find a hiding place where someone cannot attack him in his state. Protagonists have often tried to locate him in this state, and they mostly failed because of how well hidden his coffins lay. In the last voyage of the Demeter, the crew of the ship failed to locate his coffin during the day, even though it was a restricted environment. What is the secret behind his longevity? As the popular saying goes, what is dead may never die, and Dracula is an undead vampire who is beyond the concept of life and death. He lives on agelessly, feeding on helpless victims who keep on rejuvenating him with new life force. The secret behind his everlasting life lies in his nature and his origins, where he defied God to gain the curse of immortality. He navigates through generations and decades, spreading his evil and adding more innocent victims to his undead army that can be summoned when they are required. Is Dracula's castle a part of his existence? The grandeur of Dracula's iconic castle is known to all, but there are certain mysteries around the castle that have kept the fans guessing. Some theories suggest that Dracula is dependent on the castle for its existence, and he must carry a part of the castle with him even during his travels. For instance, when we went to London, he carried large coffins that were filled with soil from his castle. There are also some versions where we see that the castle can be moved to another place altogether if Dracula so wants it. In such cases, the castle is almost shown to be a part of his existence that goes with him wherever he does. Of course, this adds a nice sense of mystery to his overall appearance and powerful, which is rightly fitting for the Prince of Darkness. Why does Dracula need to consume human blood to survive? In folklore and mythology, it is a common notion that blood is an essential part of the human life force. Dracula is someone who survives on this life force, which he somehow absorbs to sustain himself. Thus, he needs to find prey on a regular basis, and when the local population in his homeland seemed to dry up, he sailed to London for a fresh supply of prey. We are yet to figure out if Dracula has some kind of special mechanism to digest blood, but given that he is not human, his biological details are clearly different. He might have special organs in place to process the blood that he consumes, and it gives him all the nourishment he needs to survive endlessly. Does Dracula have hypnotic powers? We have already spoken how Dracula mastered sorcery and magic alongside his vampire abilities, and one of the great instances of his insane mind powers is his ability to hypnotize individuals. Dracula can hypnotize his victims very easily, especially if they are a weak character, and this helps him spread the forces of evil. He can ensure that an individual falls into a state of deep trance and will then obey every command of Dracula, even turning against his own people. In the novel, when Jonathan Harker tried to kill Dracula in his sleep, the sight of Dracula left him paralyzed and helpless. These hypnotic powers are even stronger if Dracula manages to bite his victim, because the infectious bite turns them into one of his kind, and he can manipulate their minds a lot easier. Can Dracula shapeshift into anything he wants? Dracula was a master shapeshifter, and he could potentially change into anything that he wants. There have been several instances where he assumed lesser life forms such as a rat or a bat or a wolf. He could also become almost invisible in the mist and move through moonlight. We have already discussed about how his human form can be quickly transformed, but there are some terrifying versions of Dracula across media. One of the most recent examples can be cited from the movie The Last Voyage of the Demeter, where Dracula effectively appears as a humanoid bat monster the whole time. His shape-shifting abilities are remarkable beyond a shade of doubt, and Dracula could manifest all that he wants to be to suit his conditions. How are animals able to detect the presence of Dracula? In the movie The Last Voyage of the Demeter, Dracula's appearance on board was first detected by all the animals in the ship. The livestock went berserk in their cages, which was initially mistaken as fear due to an upcoming storm. However, it was soon revealed that Dracula's presence is what triggered all the animals. Even the dog on board was aware of his supernatural presence, and as you would expect, Dracula made quick work of all the animals on board in one night. Animals in general are known to sense a lot more that is missed by the human senses. Their enhanced sense of hearing and smell alerts them to the presence of this unholy monster, and this can be used as an advantage by humans to prepare for the evil force. How does anime portray Dracula? The legend of Dracula has been acknowledged in the world of anime as well, and one of the popular instances has to be Castlevania. The popularity of Dracula was too difficult to ignore in anime, and Castlevania gave us a very different version of the mythical monster. In the animated series, Dracula established himself as the strongest vampire, and he was known for his brutality and violence against anyone who wronged him. However, he changed after meeting Lisa. He changed his ways at her insistence after developing strong feelings for her. They even got married and had a son named Adrian. But this peace in his life was short-lived because once during his absence, Lisa was sentenced to death on the charges of witchcraft. He summoned an army from hell to express his fury toward humanity, and the people responsible for Lisa's death were massacred. The story has further complexities going ahead, but it is abundantly clear that this version of Dracula is not exactly inspired by Bram Stoker's original version. That being said, the supernatural abilities and the immortal nature of Dracula were kept intact as Castlevania added further complexities to his character. Does Dracula cast a shadow? Bram Stoker maintains that Dracula doesn't cast a shadow, and neither is there a reflection of him in the mirror. There might be various explanations for this defiance of the basic laws of nature. The first thing that comes to mind is the absence of his soul. Shadows are sometimes associated with the essence of our soul of a person, and the absence of shadows symbolizes the evil, otherworldly nature of Dracula. The missing shadow emphasizes Dracula's unnatural existence. In a world bound by physics, every object casts a shadow, so the absence of one underscores Dracula's deviation from the natural order. It could also be the case that Dracula's body allows light to pass through, thus making the creation of shadows or reflections impossible. Overall, this characteristic allows him to be more stealthy and elusive in nature, and it adds to his predatory prowess and helps him in stalking his prey. Exploring Dracula's lust, his 3 brides, and his obsession with the beautiful young women. Dracula is said to be living with 3 beautiful female vampires who are often regarded as his brides. These alluring vamps share an intimate relationship with him, and there is also a possibility that they are related and family members. While the narrative doesn't make it clear, it does suggest that Dracula has a never-ending lust for beautiful young women whom he is eager to convert into his prey. This could be his way of finding happiness by corrupting everything that is pure and beautiful. This would explain why he went after Harker's devoted fiancée Mina and her beautiful friend Lucy. Being in the company of young women who have been corrupted by his evil blood is probably one of the secrets behind his long life, given that he absorbs their life force to add to his own. Can Dracula control the weather? There have been a few instances that suggested his godlike ability to control the weather, which only goes on to show just how powerful Dracula is. He can summon storms and change a sunny day into a dark, cloudy day in the wink of an eye. While he was traveling in the Demeter, he brought severe storms to suit his atmosphere and hunting advantages, and the hopeless crew had no clue about how to deal with the rough weather and a preying vampire together. Even in the novel, there are a couple of instances where Dracula can be observed manipulating weather conditions, and these are certain aspects that set him apart from the regular vampires. How does garlic and holy symbols affect Dracula? Given that Dracula is basically near invincible, the mortals hardly have a chance against him. Thus, it was necessary to devise certain weaknesses in this immortal vampire that could make him for a fair fight. As revealed in Bram Stoker's version of Dracula, garlic can be used effectively to repel him. What exactly is it about garlic that keeps Dracula away remains a mystery, but there are certain theories regarding this. Firstly, garlic has been used for ages as a mechanism to fight evil forces. It could also be something as simple as the ability in garlic to trigger some kind of adverse reaction in Dracula. It's regarded as something that even sets a boundary between good and evil, and garlic could make sure that Dracula couldn't attack an individual directly. That being said, Dracula did lure out one of his victims from the room that was protected by garlic, only to make a prey out of her. Holy symbols have a similar effect on Dracula, which is probably his aversion to the human norms of ethics and spirituality. He is an evil existence, and the sight of anything godly and pure keeps him away. They have been used time and again to attack and torment Dracula, and are among the few things that can potentially weaken him enough to be vulnerable. Does Dracula have regenerative abilities? Such a powerful vampire wouldn't be standing strong for thousands of years without remarkable healing abilities. Dracula has shown powers that allow him to heal very quickly from near-fatal injuries and blows that his enemies brought down upon him. quick escape into the darkness or finding a safe space inside his castle could work wonders on his health, and his weakened body could regenerate and be back to normal in no time. This means that in order to defeat him, Dracula could not be given the opportunity to regenerate under any circumstances. Can Dracula be killed? Even though Dracula is technically an immortal, there are certain weaknesses and conditions that can potentially kill him. This has been shown in the novel, where in the final battle, Dracula is stabbed in the heart and his head is chopped off. His body crumbled into dust, signaling a final defeat. Chopping off the head and burning the body is often regarded as the universal way to stop a vampire, and Dracula is no exception. The holy symbols, garlic bits, and lethal weapons could be combined in the hands of capable men to get the job done, and that's how Dracula was finally defeated. Dracula has been a subject of mysteries for generations, and his evil escapades have entertained the fans for decades. We hope that more is added to this remarkable lore in the near future so that we don't lose this horror classic anytime soon. Do let us know in the comments below about your thoughts on Dracula and his evil reign, and also tell us what you think about the intricate details of his anatomy.